To welcome Miss Brenda Dempsey. Miss Brenda is a visionary action woman and spirited leader who has won over 17 prestigious awards in her career. She also built the I Can movement of 1 million spirited leaders to help raising their voices of courage, impacting change, and creating extraordinary results for themselves, others, and the world through imagination, innovation, and influence. Recently, during the COVID-19, she created her new business that is Book Brilliance Publishing, a publisher with difference for authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs. Welcome, ma'am. It is our immense pleasure to have you here today as our speaker. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here today. And I'm just thrilled to share a platform with so many amazing women and men. So I have a PowerPoint. So let's hope it works. Okay. We're talking about technology. So what I want to talk to you about today, what's coming, obviously is personal power for children. So I was a teacher for 25 years. And as a young child, I was always interested in people being the best and helping others. So as a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, I would raise money for children in Africa. And as a 10-year-old, on our screens, television was these absolute, it was such a sorrowful sight of seeing these children with no clothes on, pot-bellied because of the hunger. And it was my first introduction to the world at large, and that there was people in the world suffering, but not just people, children. So I was so moved as a 10-year-old that I went out and raised the equivalent of 1 week's wages back in the 60s to donate to these children. And I've lived my life like that ever since, helping others that are less fortunate, but mainly children, hence I became a teacher. And between teaching and entering into the coaching world and leadership and into publishing now, the most important thing is personal power. And there's no reason why we can't introduce children to personal power. Our last speaker, Aline, she spoke about meditation and things that you should never say to children because they do develop limiting beliefs, and we all have limiting beliefs, and they're because of our background, our environment, and what we've heard as children, whether it's our parents, our friends, our extended family, our teachers in the community. So for me, where do you begin to keep children safe? You begin by teaching them personal power. You begin by letting them know they have a voice. Just because they're 5 or 7 or 10 or 12 doesn't mean to say they don't have their own voice. They do. And again, our last speaker was talking about them having that power. Her words were slightly different, but it was the same thing. So for me, personal power is so important. And what I want to talk about, there's going to be 3 things I'm going to focus on today. So the safety rules for children when they're on their own, how they can follow these rules, and children need to practice them. Like everything, you need to practice these what to say in situations, and the safety rules with people kids know. So kids need to know how to keep themselves safe in their own home, in the community, when they're with people they know, and when they're with strangers. There used to be a phrase called stranger danger, but that just creates anxiety in children because they begin then to fear that everybody is going to be a problem for them, whereas the reality is most people are kind and fair. And if you look at statistics, you do find that children that are abused by someone they know rather than a stranger. But yet here I'm in the UK. I remember growing up, it was always about stranger danger, but we need to be careful of the words we use. And again, Helena, I think you and I definitely need a conversation, because you were talking about the words you say to children and the impact that they have. And if you feed children fear, they're going to be anxious, and we certainly don't want anxiety, because then we're getting into mental health, and that can go on for years and years and years, if not decades, with children in their lives, you know. So the thing is about having a dialogue and asking children, is there anything that's worrying you and that you would like to talk about? Is there anything that's been on your mind that you know, we can share? Because you want to be giving them, it's not enough to talk to children, you have to give them that time to practice. So it's so important that we have the practice and skills. So if we look at what safety rules are, as I said, most people are good, and this means most strangers are good. And a stranger is just someone that you don't know, but they can look like anybody. You cannot tell an abuser of a child by how they look. Of course, we have some stereotypical images that are in our mind, but really anybody can be an abuser. But the thing is, most people are good and kind. So the rules, they're different. They have to know, what are the rules when I'm with an adult that I know and I like and I trust? What do I have to say? I need to know that I have to speak to them, that they will help keep me safe, and that if someone comes up to me as a stranger, I have to be with my adult. And, you know, you see it with children. I know if I speak to a child, and I do speak to children, I was a teacher, and it's just natural for me to maybe say something to a child. But then I'm looking at that parent or adult they're with, and so is the child. They're looking for that reassurance. It's all right to talk to this person, you know. But what happens when your child's no longer 6, 7, and 8, but they're getting a little more freedom and they're outside on their own? They need to learn to be able to deal with strangers, or even people they know, when they're feeling that danger, when they're out on their own. How do they, how can they be safe? And how do they approach other people if they're feeling threatened or if they're feeling in danger? So you will teach them not to give out personal information to a stranger, maybe their name, but nothing else, you know, because it's important that they maintain control. It's their personal power, that they don't give anything away. So we have to tell children and allow them to practice saying that they don't want to give, being assertive and not want to give away that information. But they also need to know that it's okay to go to strangers when there's an emergency. So when there's an emergency that's happening to them, they need to know that it is okay then to go and ask strangers. So you might tell them to go into a shop or a place where there's people maybe in a job, or a place that's knowing to be safe. It's important then that they know that they can go and get that help if they're feeling insecure. So they have to learn.
Can I interrupt you for a minute, please? Actually, the slides are, I think this is on the first slide. So is it possible?
Oh, is it not showing?
Showing? No, it's not. I think you could just go to the next slide.
Let me, can you see the slides?
Yes.
So I think I'm on this slide currently.
Yeah, it's now.
I just put it this way rather than I was doing it as a slideshow. But then you see, it means everything's on the screen. It doesn't matter. I'll just go with it. I was trying not to have much. Okay, so I was at the part where my job is to check first with the adult in charge before they go anywhere. But when they are on their own, there's no one for them to check in with. So you have to talk through all the different scenarios and give them and equip them with what they might say, what they might do, who they might talk to. That's so important. So obviously, these are conversations that happen over time as the child is developing. You don't sit down and go, blah, and give them everything at once. So this is something that you should be talking to them from an early age and as they're developing and growing up, and you just give them little bits of information and you talk about it not just once, not just twice, but over and over again, and ask them, what would you do? Once you tell them what to do and what to say, let them practice it out. So ask them to do that. You know, and schools are a great place, but I know that not all children are going to school every day. So this is not just the job for parents. This is a job for parents, schools, community, wherever the children are, the people, the adults around. Everybody needs to be part of this situation. It's so important so that the child feels safe and secure at all times. So it's about giving them a plan. It's giving them the tools, the techniques, the strategies that they can use in a myriad of situations and with those different people, you know, so that you're equipping them with a life skill. And some of these skills we need to use as well as adults when we get ourselves into tricky situations. So they will know what is the family safety rules, what's okay when I'm with adults, what's okay when I'm on my own, what's okay when I'm in other situations like clubs, like school, like when they're out shopping or at a marketplace. How are they keeping themselves safe? Because they cannot rely that other adults will keep them safe. We know that is just not the case. We just need to look at the figures. And already looking at what are the rules with the internet, if they answer a drone, they answer a phone, all of these things. There's so many aspects of child safety, from psychological to emotional to physical. But today, my focus is on that power. So we have to empower the children with what it is they have to know. So to follow rules, so we've talked about the rules, they have to practice it. So how should they stand? How should they walk? What is awareness? How can we make them more confident? How can we make them use what we're equipping them with and say it with confidence, say it in an assertive way, that they don't come across as cheeky. You know, there's a saying, children should be seen and not heard. Whilst it's not quite the case here in the UK, I know that it is the case in other places around the world. How do you keep a safe distance from someone approaching? Learn what to do. I remember as a child walking the streets, and what I was told from my mother when I was like 9 and 10, if I was out, if you feel frightened, go and find a man. Now, that's not what we would tell children today. So things change over time. So just they need to know what to do when they're out and about, and how do they keep themselves safe in that distance. And how do they walk away if someone approaches them without waiting? How do they just move on, even if the person's been very nice? I remember a time as a child when a man tried to lure me down a very quiet place near a canal. And I just, you know, sixth sense, and children have this, and teach them to understand their sixth sense, because I just knew this man was trying to do something that wasn't right, and I didn't know him. So I just turned on my heels and I ran all the way home, and I didn't stop. So it's making sure the child knows exactly what to do if they are approached by a stranger, and giving them its opportunity to practice it. Let them practice what they're doing. How to check first, even when someone says not to. So what do they need to do to check in that it's all right? It's so important that they have got this plan and they've acted it out. how do you get away from a busier and sensitive adult if they are lost or scared? You know, sometimes children want adult attention, but the adult, and they're really scared and they're in a very dangerous situation, but the adult isn't recognizing those signs. So what does the child do in those such situations? Maybe in a situation, they have to practice being noisy, running, getting to the safety. It's so important. Like I told you, I ran away when a man tried to lure me, and they might lure you with sweets, they'll give you money, whatever it is, they'll find a way. Or they might say, oh, your mum sent me, or your dad sent me. So children need to understand. So have code words and things like this with the child. So they will ask, oh, what's the code word? You know, and then an adult, if they're not an adult who's helping that child, they'll get on their tail because they'll think, well, this child knows quite a bit. I've not got a vulnerable child here. So a lot of adults think children are vulnerable. At this point, I also want to say, it's not just adults children need to be wary of, because children abuse children. Maybe a child 2 or 3 years older can abuse other children. So that's important too, that children have to have that feeling that they're safe. And if they're not safe, irrespective of the age of that other person, they have that right to say no. And also, if you're out in the street, there's rules. But what happens if someone tries to come to the home and get into the home and approaches them there? Because absolutely, when we're in our home, we feel safe. Our home is that safe and secure place. But as we know, I know here in the UK, there's been many attacks, and God forbid, there's been murders of people getting in. And it's so important that all scenarios are thought about. In all scenarios, the strategies are told. In all scenarios, that they are allowed to practice. So what do kids need to know? They need to know that they are themselves, that their body, their time, their spirit all belongs to them. That touch for play, teasing or affection has to be both choices, but it has to be safe. Except for health, so in the doctor and place and that, and even then make sure there's another adult. No one should touch me in any private area. So that's the parts of the body that's covered by a bathing suit. No one should be touching me there. No one should ask me to touch them either. Children need to know that that's not okay either, and that they can. I see someone's raised a hand. Can I take that at the end, Aline? Can you keep your point to the end? Okay. That no one should touch, should ask you to touch them. Again, I had the police involved when I was about 9. This happened to me right outside my home when a man asked me to touch him in a particular area. Again, something inside me went, this isn't right. I screamed and then I ran, but the police were involved in that. So, you know, this happened to me. This is like 50 odd years ago, and it's still happening today. So we have to equip our children. I innately knew what to do, but many children don't seem to. So everything is a choice. And never, ever, if someone, let them know, if someone says it's our secret, that's not all right. Those secrets should not be kept. We shouldn't be asking children to keep secrets, not at all. So they do not have the cognition or the mental capacity to be able to differentiate. So just don't ask them to keep a secret. And they need to learn that they are in control of how they feel, not other people. That includes parents. And we've already heard about that today. You know, it's their life. They've got the choice. We've just gifted them. As parents, we gift our children the gift of life. And as I said, anything that bothers me isn't a secret. If I've got a problem, I need to tell an adult I trust and keep on telling until I get help. You know, there was this, like, years ago when children said, was disclosing something, or they're just making up stories, they've got a vivid imagination. But now, you know, I was a child protection officer when I was in education, and now if a child comes to you with anything, it has to be taken as the truth. It's then up to an investigation to find out if that child has been true or if that child has been seeking attention. We should not be the judge and jury of that. So make sure that when a child comes and discloses something, that that is the truth. It takes a lot of courage for children to come and disclose something. It really, really does. And I know that firsthand, having worked with children for over 25 years and being in a privileged situation. And it's never too late to get help, because children will hide things for weeks, months, years, because they're afraid. They're afraid, they're embarrassed. The same reasons that you and I would have. Children have it, but it's magnified for them. Saying no is okay. To say no, teach your child to say no, and that's okay for them to say no. And you know, here it says use polite, clear words and good eye contact. If a child uses good eye contact and say no, an adult will definitely think, as I said earlier, they've not got a vulnerable child here. Keep persisting. People might try to bribe you. They might try and hurt your feelings. They might overpower you. They might want to try and take your power away. But you have to help that child know that that's okay. Protect themselves from hurtful words. Words, you know, there was a saying when I was growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But as we all know, words can last a lifetime. They can limit us in many, many ways as we are growing up. So words do hurt and do last a lifetime. They are the scars that cannot be seen and take longer to heal than a cut or an open wound. Verbal choices of getting out of potentially dangerous situations. They need to know what it is they're doing and what they're saying and how they're getting out there. Remember that plan of action. And knowing what they can do to get the attention of busy adults, and that they do not want to be left feeling confused and uncomfortable. So you can see I'm just touching the tip of one little part of a very jagged iceberg. But for me, if you empower a child to connect with their own power, give them the tools, give them opportunity to practice it, then children will feel safer and we won't have stranger danger. We'll have stranger security. And that's so important for children all over the world. So that leaves me just with thanking you. There's here are some of my ways in which you can connect with me, but I know Aline had her hand up. So if you've got a question or would you like to say something?
Yes, I would like to say something. It's very interesting what we're saying, because, for example, children don't tell their parents their problems when parents tell their children their problems. For example, adult stuff. If you have a problem with your husband, don't tell your children. Oh, you know, your father, he did this, you know, your mom should. This type of problems you solve with adults, not with a child. Because if you start to tell your problems to a child, the child says, oh, my parents, they have too many problems. I don't want to bring them more problems. And they stop telling you what's happening. So don't do that. And another thing that's very important, we are talking about frustration. How important for children to be frustrated, because in life you'll be frustrated one day. You'll have to learn how to, the no's will come. Okay, one day I'll fall in love for someone who is not interested in me, and it's not the end of the world. So saying no is very important. And for example, one of the things saying no is when children, they are very small and they want to sleep in parents' bed. Don't allow that, because parents, they have their intimacy and it's not a place for children sleeping in the same bed than parents. Come on. Oh, he's crying. I'm telling you what my clients tells me. Oh, I don't know what to do with my daughter. She's not 9 years old and she wants to sleep between my, come on, put in their room. Say no. It's very simple. 5 years old children, they shouldn't sleep in the same room and in the same bed than parents, because they cannot get used to have that type of touch that only couples have, you know?
Yeah, and I think, Aline, I mean, that's another whole conversation.
Yes.
Within the family home and things like that. That is another big conversation for sure.
Yes, for sure.
What's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and different cultures will also it'll be okay in one culture, but it won't be okay in another culture. Well, we know that, you know, if you've traveled the world or anything, and what you read and what you see on the TV, it's, you know, you can see, and you know, and I talk with women from many cultures, so I learned from our conversations that, oh, that would never happen, or this never happens and it's not right. So it's a big sort of issue, and we're all at different levels. But I think if we give power to our children, and let them know that they've got that power to keep themselves safe, that for me, as a teacher and having worked with children, and you can do that to quite young children, and you build on it as they go through their childhood, so by the time they're coming out as teens, they're confident young men and women, and they can deal. So you're building resilience in there. I think that's what you were alluding to as well. We need to build that resilience, that they knock down, they get back up. So all of that empowerment, assertiveness, all of that is so key. But it's the most important thing is just don't tell them. Get them to practice it, role play. All of these things are so important. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think it's very important that we talk about child safety, and you've presented it in such a wonderful presentation. And thank you so much for your time, ma'am.